All right, time for another story. Again, I hope the audio is better. I hope I improved on that. I'm going to try to make these a little quicker so that I can get the content out prior to this election. Like I said before, I'm just down here for a few days, taking some time off work, and traveled 1,800 miles to be here. And I want to have an impact on this election. So my ultimate goal is, custody, time sharing with my children. I want my children to know their father, and Michael Atkinson, Clay Atkinson, and the Atkinson regime have a direct effect on that. But this one's going to talk about Melissa Mulbach. Melissa Mulbach Newsom. Now Newsom is married to Luther Newsom, which owns Enforcement Firearms. She's employed by Chief Hurley of the police department. She's a communications officer. I'll add that in here. Now, Melissa Mulbach came up years ago in my situation, and I wasn't even aware of the impact that she was having on my situation for so long. It was just by a stroke of luck that, I found these, text messages that were shared with me, and it had all this content in there that made light to what was going on during the time I had an active restraining order under Judge Wells, and it involved time sharing, so I was allowed to have time with my daughter. Well, they did the child exchange at the city police department. So upon every time I would go to receive my daughter, for the time that I had, she was very, very young at the time, and she was breastfeeding and so on. So I understood the limited time, but at the same time, the police department made an overwhelming effort to take as much of my time after what was scheduled to receive my daughter away from me by holding me in the police department, surrounding my vehicle outside, questioning me left and right, wanting to search my vehicle, wanting to see if I had things that would normally be held in a refrigerator at home, with me, and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, it eventually resulted in me, again, exercising my right to remain silent. And I know the officer if I saw him, and I could point him out to you, but I'm gonna wait this airplane out. So I know who the officer is, but ultimately this happened over and over again, twice a week. And when I would return my daughter to my now ex, there was absolutely no problem. Even with an active restraining order, we were allowed to sit there on that little wall at the old police station, sit there and talk. And we were never bothered. Nobody ever came out and had, boo to say to us. But absolutely every single time I received my daughter, I'd sat there, I think the most was up to 45 minutes. And I had to watch my daughter in her mom's hands, looking back through the glass, the old police station, looking at me and reaching, and just, from what I could see, she was, trying to mouth daddy. And excuse me, this is, I tried to wait for this one to last because this gets a little emotional. This gets more into my kids. So anyway, I had all these problems during the child exchange, but never upon returning my daughter to her mother. And this went on for some time. I let go of the restraining order, and in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have. I've had little contact after that with my daughter, and I've not met my son yet. So I later was shared these text messages from Melissa Mulbach to my ex, going through efforts to violate the court order and do different things to harass the child exchange. And I later attempted to take this to judge. I tried to file a restraining order to remove Melissa Mulbach from the equation, and upon doing that, I filed with the court they gave me a date, and when I went in, I was going to present all the text messages and the evidence and everything from the child exchanges. And instead of that, with an active federal case against Michael Atkinson and Sergeant Hoke, Judge Wells surrounded me with bailiffs that at least 3 of them were named in my lawsuit. There were up to at least 15 law enforcement in there, including city police, surrounding me, the one requesting the restraining order, and Melissa Mulbach, then now Newsom, sitting over there just, happier than can be, knowing there was nothing going to happen. And Judge Wells absolutely opened up with stating that he wasn't going to, go after anything criminal or prosecute his law enforcement employees there, and absolutely refused to take my evidence packs that I had prepared and view any of the text messages, the video content of the child exchanges, or anything for that matter. And when we started, I brought up the active federal case and the fact that all the bailiffs were surrounding me that were named in it. And Judge Wells went to say, just note that Mr. Wagner is referring to, and he tried to start giving their names. And if you like to, you can get the transcripts. I gave their names and most of their badge numbers right there, right off the top of my tongue. And, I left out of there with paper in my hand, denied on a restraining order. And since then, Melissa Mulbach has continued to be a part of the harassment and a part of the Walton County regime. When I was finally notified that Melissa Mulbach was a part of the Walton County Sheriff's Department Cadet Academy program, and soon to possibly become a sheriff's deputy, I literally, from over here at home, I packed my things and got what I needed to be able to work and focus on that. Well, I fought my case from 1,800 miles away, because I was in absolute fear at this time with the amount of harassment and assaults that had taken place up to this point, that I'd be somewhere out in these woods, or out in the Gulf off 30A somewhere. So I went ahead and thought it better to leave and fight from somewhere else and come home when I could. Well, coming home when I could turned into something else, because the detective that works for the city police department lives down at the end of our road, and she works hand in hand with Melissa Mulbach. So, ultimately every time I would leave out of here, I would be followed and tailed by city police, or county sheriffs. And ultimately they ended up, putting a criminal charge on me. And after that, I left the sheriff's department after being bonded out, and requested the video immediately from the records there, and have those exchanges, and never given the records and video from that arrest. But when I left there, came home over to here, and I would drive around and come up to the Piggly Wiggly out here and get stuff from my grandmother while I was home off of her grocery list. Every time I'd have to drive by that city detective. Every time I'd end up at the Piggly Wiggly. We've got pictures and video. I'll share them on here. We have what looks like Sergeant Cook's pickup truck everywhere I'm going, leaving out of parking lots, even in town where I'm having dinner with friends, and he sees me recording and goes to take off. But he ultimately, a couple days after my release, pulled me over here on Highway 90, and I had seen him while I was at the Piggly Wiggly. I proceeded to leave, called a friend of mine that has been keeping up with this and does a lot of advocacy for people. I had her on the phone, concerned about what might be taking place because of what just happened at the jail. And David Nelson repeatedly telling me that he'd rip my limbs off, shove them up my ass, he'd do it in front of those cameras, and he didn't give a fuck who was watching. He also said that, if I don't straighten you up in here, we'll straighten you up out there. So I believe this to be true, and, even more so now. Well, I come up the road here, and oncoming on Highway 90, as at 2-lane there, just before the city limits ended, I see the pickup that I come to find out has Sergeant Cook in it, coming, eastbound from the west side, and I'm going westbound back towards Woodyard Road to go home over here. Well, when he comes by me, he's got his lights going. He busts a U-turn, comes in and pulls me over. That becomes relevant later. And he commences to telling me why he pulled me over, which, when I tell you later, it had been hard for him to have figured any of this out from 55 to 60 miles an hour, both of us going head on towards each other, and run my plate from a Florida registered vehicle, only having a back plate. So, he said he ran my plate from behind me, and the registered owner, went on, and these were his reasons for pulling me over. And I've got that in an email from statement from the police department from him. And I've got videos saying otherwise. And the reason that he pulled me over is because the detective over here, I'll try to figure out her name and I'll add that in here so we can understand who we're talking about, maybe even some, nice photos. I'll try to, do some artwork to it. But anyway, I have to drive by her, and they're notified at the police department, or, knowing them, they can call each other, text each other right to their personal phones. So I end up getting a canine search on my vehicle, and these numbskulls, I have 2 phones, so I'm carrying, I'll let that out now because it's going to be obvious before too long. I have 2 phones, and I have my earbuds in talking to somebody on the phone, but they're stacked on top of each other in black otter boxes, and they have no idea that I'm recording because they think I'm talking to somebody. So I picked up on everything. You can see hand signals to the canine. And just in addition here, now I've worked with canine trainers and handlers, and I've done, CERT training over in Bay County with, federal and local law enforcement agencies from all over the United States. And abroad, I worked with the military, and in Puerto Rico and other areas, I worked with U.S. law enforcement. Never had any issues everywhere. We work shoulder to shoulder, and we return favors to each other and get each other out of pinches. So, it's never been a problem anywhere except for when I return home to, Walton County. So the traffic stop takes place. Canine searches my vehicle. They find nothing. We all mosey on. I go home. I immediately go back to the house, start making my request for the records. I get what I told you back that says, he ran my plate from behind me and registered owner, blah, blah, blah. So he pulls me over for that. Well, when I pulled these records, the dispatcher's name on there was Melissa Newsom. And she's been the other end of all of these, for every records request I pulled. And even going up there and trying to get physical records from there, she's been the person on the other side of the microphone that does everything in her power, will not announce her name. I've got that recorded. I don't know if I'll go back and dig all of these things up. They're archives at this point, not that they really hold any legal value. Maybe statute of limitations have ran out, but the character has not. Their character is still the same because actions are not taken. Even if actions are taken, the buck stops somewhere. You can't get past internal affairs. The FDLE sends your complaints right back to the sheriff when he's named in them. You try to get something done about Lieutenant James Pittman, and you're a victim of a home invasion and God knows what else. That you're so scared knowing that there's no action going to be taken. What happened before that? And this, all leads back to Michael Atkinson. So eventually Melissa Mulbach was booted, or she washed out, or all my phone calls and constant emails and everything else trying to put her, everybody on notice about her, finally rang enough that they weren't going to give her a job. She's probably just going to end up having to wash out, go somewhere else, resign, and get a job somewhere else. But nonetheless, she was washed out, done whatever with the Cadet program, and now she's back dispatching full-time, or still doing that, just not doing Walton County now. But that gave me some relief. But, since then I've learned that, James is doing, Lieutenant James Pittman is, doing his thing. David Nelson, Deputy David Nelson of the jail did his thing, lets the cat out of the bag about James, in public to other people that don't appreciate, the lieutenant of the Walton County Sheriff's Department deliberately harassing an 89-year-old woman. I can take the hits. Like I said, I've been tortured. I've been, illegally detained, accused of turning a baby into a zombie, and, done all this in a third world prison where we don't have the rules that we have here. You shouldn't expect that to happen here. And, especially from a developed first world country's law enforcement agency. So Melissa Mulbach became such a highlight for me in my child custody case. And it seemed like at the time, you know, one of the major wedges in it. But come to find out, like I said, she's just a small cog in the bigger game, and really a nobody ultimately. But she was in the position to cause me a lot of problems, and in the position to dispatch her police force to, you know, assist her in doing so during our child exchanges. And you know, even my stepdaughter, I say my stepdaughter, I'm sorry, she's not my stepdaughter. My ex's daughter called me daddy from, you know, right around the time she was 3 years old. And one night during the child exchanges, as they were leaving, she got her way out of her booster seat and jumped out the window right there in that godforsaken old police department, and said, you know, she put her arms out to hug me out the window as her mom was backing up. Just fortunately, she was in the parking lot going slow, because she wasn't in any danger really. And I was right there. And she put her arms out and wanted to give me a hug, and said that she was never going to have another daddy like me. And that hurt, because that child was the reason, you know, her accepting me was the reason that I decided I could be a father at, you know, a month away from being 40 years old is when we finally had our daughter. And knowing that Melissa Mulbach was even a small cog in tearing that fabric, our relationship apart, was, you know, enough to send me on a road about her. So it's been long enough, and I've done probably what I'm going to do with it, that I'm going to go ahead and say that I hired a private investigator. Melissa Mulbach was one of the ones I had a deep dive done on. And come to find out, Melissa Mulbach does have a criminal record in her home state. And I'll just say that one of the charges that were given to me in the statement were that of false allegations to law enforcement. And she's our dispatcher. She was going to be a cadet at Walton County. And if you can imagine somebody that, however many years ago that took place, I'll probably add that in the scroll here or something when I go back and look at that record. But somebody that does that at whatever age, again, that character does not change. That's who she is. That's who they are. You know, some people change for the better, some people change for the worse, and they're in a position where there's been no repercussions, no consequences for their actions. They seem to just move around and continue to get, you know, jobs and employment throughout positions that impact families' lives, tear families apart, leave a 5-year-old boy to not know his father, to know the last time that he FaceTimed with them, his father was concerned because he was crawling across the floor to a convicted meth cook's feet, and the man was playing guitar to my child. DCF here in Walton County are the ones that convicted him on that. Walton County Sheriff's Department convicted him on that, and Walton County DCF has taken his children away from him. Yet I can't even see my children, and these are the type of people that are enabled. And when I say enabled, James Pittman, Melissa Mulbach, Michael Atkinson, Clay Atkinson, all of their underlings and so on, that just ancestral bloodline through our sheriffs and police department and our government here locally. It's damaging beyond beach property. It's damaging beyond the pollution to the bay. It's damaging beyond zoning things and whatever else you can imagine. It's families that are being destroyed. 5-year-old boys that don't meet their father. Little girls that, you know, climb across the table to sit in their daddy's lap at every meal and mimic everything they do, and no longer able to do that, just all of a sudden tore apart. And it's at the hands of even the small cogs like Melissa Mulbach. She made those child exchanges absolutely torture. It's like I've said to all of these deputies every time they've interacted with me, beat on me, I can take it from you. You know, I've taken it from far worse than you and braver than you. But don't do it to my family. Don't do it to my grandmother. Don't do it to my siblings. Don't do it to my, you know, my kids. You know, they need a father, and I'm a good father, and you have no weight in that And Melissa Mulbach, shame on you for using your position to destroy families. And this is just a story about mine. I hope this encourages anybody that had interactions at that police department to, you know, maybe possibly bring to light why some of those issues were taking place. And again, I'm sorry if there's any audio, video issues. I hope you can hear my story. I appreciate, you know, constructive criticism. I really just want to get all this out there. I'm an amateur at this. I'm not really huge on any kind of social media stuff, anything like that. I fell asleep on Fox News after my Haitian vacation, and I mic dropped in front of hundreds of people, dozens of times, because I'm not a public speaker, but this impacts me somewhere deep. And I know that it affects other families, and if I'm the one that can, you know, take the hits from these guys, and so be it, you know, I'll do it. And I'll keep producing this stuff, because there's a lot more stories. And when I tell you these, I want to, you know, reiterate, if you don't understand this yet, I would do absolutely nothing to jeopardize my relationship and being able to have a relationship with my children in any way. And that includes, you know, making false claims or anything of the sort. I don't have a whole lot of time to put all the content that I have up, but I'm going to do as best I can to get that. Anybody that is interested in anything that I don't put up, you're welcome to put in a public records request like everybody else, and everything that I've said will be backed up. And the stuff that isn't able to be backed up from the county, you know, I'll add to this later when I settle back in and get back to work and back on my normal routine. But I wanted to have an impact in this election and get a story out from, you know, a demographic on the north end that, you know, deals with the sheriff's department, law enforcement, local government, and the police department on a different level than the south end, and doesn't have so much of a voice or financial and connected backing to ensure safety and, you know, just the feeling of protection in your freedom to just be able to voice these situations. And why should we even have to? You know, we get somebody in there that backs constitutional civil rights like Aaron Murray and Alan Osborne, then, you know, we will see that our demographic will see a change in how we're treated and you know, handled here, and expected to, you know, we will no longer be expected to be an inferior community. You know, we'll be the reason they're out there, and they'll understand that, and we'll have the respect. We just got to voice what's been going on and get every one of these just sick individuals with badges. These are sadistic gun carrying, badge toting, transportation provided, suit wearing mob. They're you know, a militia, a group of Gestapos. But let's stop it. I'm going to leave it there, get this content out, add my banners and some of that so you can understand more of what I'm trying to put out there. Thank you for listening. Again, any constructive criticism, you know, would be appreciated. Thank you.